In this section, we're going to be looking at art that is made or used in a religious context, so deities and places of worship. And one thing to mention before I get into it is that this is the first chapter we've dealt with that is thematic. One of the reasons that I liked this text and use it is because it's not dealing with art chronologically, it's looking at themes that humans have come back to over and over again throughout history and in different cultures. So the first video about Carl Jung and this idea of the collective unconscious is really important idea to understand, especially when looking at religious art. And the three cultures that we're going to look at, Haitian Vodun, Navajo Native Americans, and Tibetan Buddhists, all making strikingly similar art as part of their religious practice, even though there's really no way that they could have communicated with each other directly. So the idea is that they have all, in one form or another, tapped into this collective unconscious. They have similar myths as part of their religious practice, or actions like prayer. Even this symbol of holding two hands together happens in lots of different cultures. One little footnote is that I own 3 dogs, and so you're probably going to hear signs of them in the background of some of these recordings. They're just along for the ride. Okay, so the next video just to talk about for a second is this one from the Kwakiutl culture, Northwest United States, and Canada and Alaska, Native American culture. One of the things I want to stress here that they discuss in this video is, the importance of these masks and their role in spiritual practice. People in non-industrial cultures have a very different relationship to material things than we do. Like they say in the video, we can go out and buy the things we want. We're accustomed to buying the things that we want, need, use in our lives. But in a ceremonial context, these objects have a very different kind of importance. They earn the right to keep these things. They don't display them when they're not in use. They're only out when they're being used for their purpose they were made for. They're very sacred objects. Most Native American cultures believe that that thing is actually alive. If you read the various types of religions in the textbook, this is an animistic culture. Everything is invested with life. Stones, the air, the 4 directions, north, south, east, west, trees, you name it. Everything is living. So like I said, they have a very different, much more advanced attitude towards material objects. The other thing to mention too is this idea of medicine. You hear kind of a derogatory term for native healers being a medicine man. Well, medicine in a Native American tradition was a lot more nuanced as well. When we think of medicine, we think of it purely as something that you put in your body to help fix whatever your problem is. But medicine to Native Americans would have been spiritual, emotional, physical, all those things. So a Hamatsa, this person that you see in this video, is a healer on a number of levels. It's not just about taking a pill. It's about healing yourself spiritually or emotionally. I think they understood what we call mental health, psychotherapy. They understood that a long, long time ago. It was a part of this religious practice. Another thing, too, to point out is that this style of art that you see, that something that you've probably seen particularly in NFL football, the Seattle Seahawks, because that's the area where these Native Americans live. But I really think it's important to point out in a class like this that that kind of co-opting of cultural identity isn't something that these people are necessarily pleased with. That's part of their cultural history. And for dominant culture to simply take that style and use it and make a lot of money off of it isn't necessarily a compliment. Some of you may know that the Florida State Seminoles have some kind of agreement with the actual Seminole Nation to use the name. I'm not so sure that the Seahawks have made that kind of agreement with the Kwakiutl people. So really quickly, I'm going to show you some brief segments from these 3 videos and point out some similarities here. This is the video on the Divine Horseman. It's the Haitian Voodoo culture. There's no such thing as voodoo. That's something that was invented by Hollywood. But the Haitian Voodoo culture, according to your textbook, would be an example of a polytheistic religion. But notice that as part of their ceremony, they are making a motif on the ground. In this instance, it is made out of flour, wheat flour, and it is around that pole, so it's kind of a circular motif. They're calling in particular deities by making particular kinds of drawings. So you're seeing powdered pigments put on the ground as part of a religious ceremony, and it's in a circular motif. The next video that you can see a little bit of is Tibetan Buddhist monks creating a sand mandala. Well, mandalas are very important symbolic works meant to talk about the journey through life, not unlike the prayer labyrinth in a medieval cathedral. You'll notice that it's a round motif. Now normally this would be on a floor, but in this instance they've put it on this platform just so it's protected, putting some plexiglass in front of it. This isn't glued down, this is simply sand that's sprinkled very, very carefully to create this traditional composition. And this act that you're seeing right here is terribly important in the whole Buddhist philosophy. I always shudder a little when I see the Dalai Lama there start to destroy it. But that's a symbolic act. We're all going to die one day. Nothing is permanent. We're always changing, always will be. And so that's a big part of this symbolic act right here. No matter how beautiful this thing is, it's impermanent. And it has to be destroyed. And I love this act right here where they're sweeping it all together and brightly colored pigments all get mixed together and kind of turn brown. After watching this video for a few times, I realized that there's something in that too. In a way, you're seeing it die. I think that's a really powerful visual image there. And then they take it out to the river, send it out to the world. So that sand was invested with prayer. They prayed over that while it was being made and after it was made. So that sand becomes kind of a vehicle for prayer, something that you see in a lot of religions. By burning something or releasing it into the environment, it carries prayers. Native American pipes are not called peace pipes, but pipes, and smoking tobacco in them did the same kind of thing. The smoke from that tobacco went out into the world and carried the prayer that was put into that tobacco. And then last is this healing ritual done by Navajo Native Americans. The beginning of them making this is absolutely identical to the beginning of that person setting up the Voodoo ceremony. The crossroads, it's a circle with an X through it. The video talks about the various meanings of these things that they're making, but again, you have a circular motif made out of powdered colored pigments, and it's being made on the ground, and they're praying into it. It's impermanent. At the end of this video, it's swept up and carried off to the mountains. In this instance, the object, the art object, was meant to take the illness out of this little boy. So as opposed to being a prayer that goes out into the world, it's a vehicle to take the sickness that this boy has in his body, and then that material is taken up to the mountains. So again, it's a really good example of this idea of the collective unconscious. And one last thing to point out that I didn't early on is that these would be called archetypal images. A-R-C-H-E-T-Y-P-A-L, archetypal. So that crossroads is an archetypal image.